The sharp crack of a blade meeting leather wrong echoed across the dusty yard, and Benjamin Tucker knew someone was destroying a perfectly good hide before he even rounded the corner of the barn in Granite, Colorado, on that sweltering August afternoon in 1882. He had been riding fence line for the better part of 3 days, checking the boundaries of the ranch that stretched across the high country valleys where the mountains met the plains. His father had died 2 winters past, leaving him the land and all the knowledge that came with working it. Benjamin was 26 now, weathered by sun and wind, his hands calloused from rope and leather, his back strong from years of breaking horses and hauling supplies. The ranch demanded everything from him, and he gave it willingly because it was all he had left of the man who raised him. But now, standing at the edge of the tanning area his father had built near the creek, Benjamin watched a young woman massacre what should have been prime cowhide with cuts so uneven and careless that half the leather would be unsalvageable. She had dark blonde hair pinned up haphazardly, escaping in wisps around a face flushed with effort and frustration. Her dress was simple calico, the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms covered in bits of flesh and fat from the hide. She was utterly focused on her work, which made it all the more painful to witness. "You are cutting against the grain," Benjamin said, his voice carrying across the small space. The woman startled, nearly dropping her knife. When she turned to face him, he saw eyes the color of summer sage, wide with surprise and then narrowing with defensive irritation. She could not have been more than 22 or 23, with a face that would have been pretty if it was not currently set in stubborn determination. "I am doing just fine, thank you," she said, her voice having an Eastern lilt that marked her as someone far from home. "I do not need instruction from every man who happens by." Benjamin stepped closer, watching her turn back to the hide and make another terrible cut that separated a chunk of usable leather from the rest. He winced. That hide came from good stock. Probably a 2-year-old steer, well-fed, healthy. Could have made quality leather for saddle work, maybe even boots. Now it will be lucky to become straps for a feed bag. "I know what I am doing," she insisted, but her voice wavered just slightly. "My uncle asked me to prepare these hides, and that is what I am doing." "Your uncle?" Benjamin asked, suddenly understanding. "You must be Bill Richardson's niece. He mentioned someone was coming from Boston." She straightened, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand and leaving a smear of something unpleasant across her skin. "Bridget Richardson. And yes, I came from Boston 3 weeks ago to help my uncle with his property. He has been ill, and someone needs to manage things." Benjamin had heard about Bill Richardson's troubles. The man owned a small spread about 5 miles east, ran maybe 30 head of cattle, did some trading in town. He was a decent fellow, honest in his dealings, but he had taken sick with pneumonia that spring and had never quite recovered his strength. Benjamin had not realized Bill had sent for family. "Your uncle is a good man," Benjamin said carefully, "but if he asked you to prepare these hides, he should have shown you how. This is specialized work." Bridget's cheeks colored, and he could not tell if it was from anger or embarrassment. "He tried to show me, but he tired so quickly. I thought I could figure it out from his instructions. How difficult could it be? You simply remove the hair and flesh and treat the hide." "There is a world of skill between simple and doing it right," Benjamin said. He moved closer, gesturing to the hide stretched on the frame. "May I?" She hesitated, pride warring with pragmatism on her face. Finally, she stepped back, handing him the knife handle first. "I suppose you are one of those cowboys who knows everything about everything out here in the wilderness." "No," Benjamin said, taking the knife and feeling its balance. The blade was decent enough, but she had been holding it wrong. "I am just someone whose father taught him how to respect the animal that gave its life. Wasting good hide is like spitting on that sacrifice." Something shifted in her expression, the defensiveness softening into something more thoughtful. "I had not considered it that way." Benjamin positioned himself at the frame, studying what remained of the hide. It was worse up close than he had thought, but there were still sections that could be saved if worked carefully. "My father used to say that every part of the animal has value if you know how to see it. The hide especially. It kept the animal warm in life, and in death, it can keep us warm, shod, protected, but only if we treat it with skill." He demonstrated the proper angle for the knife, showing her how to work with the natural grain of the leather rather than against it. "You want smooth, even strokes, not too deep, or you will cut into the hide itself," not too shallow, or you will leave too much flesh attached, and it will rot. Bridget watched intently, leaning in to see better. She smelled like lye soap and sweat and something floral that seemed impossible in this landscape of dust and sage. "How did you learn all this?" "My father started teaching me when I was 8 years old," Benjamin said, his hands moving with the unconscious grace of long practice. "We would work hides together every autumn after the cattle drive. He said it was meditation as much as work, that you had to be present with what you were doing, or you would ruin everything." "He sounds like he was a wise man," Bridget said softly. "He was." Benjamin finished cleaning a section of the hide, revealing smooth leather beneath. "He died 2 years ago. Kicked by a horse he was breaking. Died 3 days later from internal bleeding. Never regained consciousness enough to say goodbye." The words came out more raw than he intended, and he felt Bridget's attention shift from the hide to him. "I am sorry," she said, and her voice carried genuine compassion. "That must have been terrible." Benjamin nodded, not trusting himself to speak for a moment. He had not talked about his father's death with anyone in months. Most people in Granite knew the story, offered their condolences, and moved on. That was the way of things out here. Death was common enough that dwelling on it served no purpose. "My mother died when I was 19, Bridget offered quietly. "Cholera outbreak in Boston. My father followed her 6 months later. The doctor said it was his heart, but I think he simply could not bear to live without her. They had been devoted to each other since they were young." "Is that why you came out here?" Benjamin asked, glancing at her. "Because you had no one left in Boston?" "My uncle is my only living relative," Bridget said. "When he wrote saying he was ill and needed help, I sold what little I had and bought passage on the train. I arrived in Denver and took the stage to Granite, and here I am, completely unprepared for everything this life requires." There was no self-pity in her voice, just honest assessment. Benjamin found himself respecting that. "You can learn," he said, "if you are willing to work at it." "I am willing," Bridget said firmly. "I am simply accustomed to different skills. I can read Latin, recite poetry, play the piano, and manage a household budget. But none of that helps me prepare hides, or manage cattle, or any of the 100 other things my uncle needs done." Benjamin handed her back the knife, positioning her hand correctly on the handle. "Then, learn new skills. Start with this. Feel how the knife sits in your palm? You want to control it from here, not from your fingertips. More control, less wasted motion." Bridget took the knife, her fingers adjusting to follow his instruction. When she made the next cut, it was cleaner, more controlled. She looked up at him with surprise and pleasure. "That is better." "Much better," Benjamin agreed. "Now do it again, and again, until your hands remember the motion without your mind having to think about it." He stayed there in the warm afternoon sun, guiding her through the process of cleaning and preparing the hide. Bridget proved to be a quick study once she understood the principles involved. Her hands, though unused to this kind of labor, were steady and capable. She asked intelligent questions about why certain techniques worked better than others, about how to read the quality of a hide, about what treatments would produce different results. "My father used a mixture of brain matter and water for tanning," Benjamin explained, showing her the leather bags where he stored his supplies. "Every animal has enough brains to tan its own hide," he used to say. "Though you can also use oak bark, sumac, other things depending on what you want the finished leather to be like." "That is fascinating," Bridget said, and she sounded like she meant it. "There is so much chemistry and biology involved in something I thought was simple manual labor." "Nothing out here is simple," Benjamin said. "That is what kills most newcomers. They think frontier life is just shooting and riding and sleeping under stars. They do not see all the skill and knowledge required to survive." "I am beginning to understand that," Bridget admitted. She finished the section she was working on and stepped back, wiping her hands on the rag Benjamin had provided. "How is it that you happened by today? This is not exactly on the road to anywhere." Benjamin felt his neck warm slightly. "I was checking the fence line between my property and your uncle's, heard the sound of blade work and came to investigate. We get drifters sometimes, and I like to know who is on neighboring land." "So you came to investigate a potential threat and found me butchering a hide instead," Bridget said, and there was amusement in her voice now. "That must have been disappointing." "Different kind of disaster," Benjamin said, and was surprised to find himself almost smiling. He did not smile much these days, but one that can be corrected with instruction rather than a rifle. "I appreciate you not shooting me," Bridget said dryly. And I appreciate the lesson, truly. I have been struggling with this for days, and my uncle grows more agitated each time he tries to help me. His breathing becomes labored, and I fear it sets back his recovery. How bad is he? Benjamin asked, concern sharpening his voice. Bill Richardson was a good neighbor, the kind of man who would ride through a storm to help with a barn raising, or bring supplies if he knew someone was snowed in. The doctor says his lungs are damaged, Bridget said, and worry creased her face. He tires easily, cannot do heavy work. I am afraid he pushes himself too hard, trying to teach me everything I need to know. He does not trust that I can manage without him hovering over every task. He probably does not want to burden you, Benjamin said. Men out here, we are taught to be self-sufficient. Asking for help does not come easy, and being unable to do our own work is worse than any sickness. That is foolish masculine pride, Bridget said with some heat. If he works himself into another bout of pneumonia, trying to prove he does not need assistance, he could die. And then, what would that pride be worth? Benjamin held up his hands in surrender. I am not disagreeing with you. I am just explaining how he likely thinks. It does not mean he is right. Bridget sighed, some of the fight going out of her. I apologize. I am frustrated. I want to help him. But I do not know how to do the things that need doing, and my mistakes cost time and money he cannot afford to lose. Like these hides, he trades them in town for supplies, for credit at the general store. If I ruin them, that is income lost. An idea formed in Benjamin's mind, one that made sense practically even as it made him nervous personally. He had been alone on his ranch for 2 years, rarely coming to town except for necessary supplies, keeping to himself in a way that probably was not healthy. His nearest neighbors were the Richardsons, and if Bill was truly as ill as Bridget described, they could use help, and Benjamin could use something to fill the empty hours beyond endless work. I could come by a few times a week, he heard himself say, teach you what my father taught me, not just hide work, but other things, animal husbandry, basic veterinary care, how to read weather, how to preserve food, skills you will need if you're going to stay out here. Bridget's eyes widened. You would do that? But surely you have your own ranch to manage. I could not ask you to sacrifice that time. You did not ask, I offered, Benjamin said. And yes, I have my own work, but it is slower this time of year. The cattle are on high pasture. The hay is cut and stored. I have some time before the autumn drives begin. Besides, he added, your uncle has helped me in the past. I owe him. What did he do? Bridget asked. Benjamin looked out across the creek, remembering. When my father died, Bill Richardson rode over every day for 2 weeks. He helped me with the stock, made sure I ate, sat with me in the evening, so I was not alone with my grief. Never said much, just his presence. That kind of kindness does not get forgotten. Bridget was quiet for a long moment, and when Benjamin looked back at her, there were tears shining in her eyes. Thank you, she said quietly. That means more than you know. Not just that you would help me, but that someone cared for my uncle that way. I have been so afraid he was alone out here with no one to rely on. He has neighbors, Benjamin said. That matters out here. Maybe more than family sometimes, because we choose to help each other. We survive because we do not try to do it alone. That is not how things worked in Boston, Bridget said. People lived on top of each other but hardly knew their neighbors' names. Everyone kept to themselves, protected their privacy. It was lonely even in a city of thousands. Different kind of loneliness out here, Benjamin admitted, but maybe a more honest one. At least we know why we are alone and what we need to change to fix it. They stood together in the afternoon light, the hide work temporarily forgotten, and Benjamin felt something shift in his chest. It was not attraction exactly, or not only attraction, though he could not deny Bridget Richardson was pretty in her Eastern way. All clean bones and direct eyes. It was more like recognition. She was alone and struggling and trying her best with inadequate tools, and he knew exactly how that felt. When can you start? Bridget asked, breaking the silence. The lessons, I mean. Tomorrow afternoon, Benjamin suggested. I can ride over after I finish morning chores. We can work on hide preparation and maybe start on some basics of cattle health. Your uncle probably has stock that needs checking. He has 33 head, Bridget said. I counted them last week, though I have no idea if that is the right number or if some are missing. They all look the same to me. Benjamin did smile at that, a small quirk of his mouth that felt strange after so long. We will work on that too. Being able to identify your stock, know which are producing well, which might be sick or injured. It is important. Everything is important, Bridget said with some exasperation. That is what I am learning. There is no margin for error out here, no room for ignorance. Every mistake has consequences. True enough, Benjamin agreed. But everyone starts somewhere. I made plenty of mistakes learning all this. Still do sometimes. That is part of the process. What kind of mistakes? Bridget asked, seeming genuinely curious. Benjamin thought back. When I was 12, I was helping my father treat a cow with hoof rot. He told me to hold her head steady while he worked on her back leg. I got distracted watching what he was doing, loosened my grip just a fraction, and she pulled away. Knocked my father into the fence post and gave him a concussion. He could barely see straight for 3 days. That must have been terrifying, Bridget said. It was. And I never made that mistake again. That is the value of errors. They teach you what success cannot. You remember the lesson that came with pain or fear or consequence. The trick is surviving your mistakes long enough to learn from them. Encouraging words, Bridget said dryly. But there was warmth in her expression now, some of the anxiety that had pinched her features smoothing away. They worked together for another hour as the sun dropped lower in the western sky, painting the mountains gold and purple. Benjamin guided Bridget through the rest of the hide preparation, teaching her how to test if the flesh was fully cleaned, how to begin the stretching process that would make the leather supple. She was patient and attentive, her hands growing more confident with each pass of the knife. When they finally finished, the hide looked immeasurably better than when Benjamin had arrived. It would not be the finest leather, but it would be serviceable, tradable. Bridget looked at it with clear satisfaction. I cannot believe the difference, she said. If you had not come by, I would have ruined the entire thing. You would have figured it out eventually, Benjamin said, though he was not entirely sure that was true. Some people never developed the feel for leather work, no matter how much they practiced. But Bridget had good instincts once she understood the principles. I doubt that, Bridget said, echoing his own thoughts. I think I would have turned it into an unsalvageable mess and cost my uncle money he cannot afford to lose. So thank you, Benjamin Tucker. You may have saved me from complete failure. Hearing his full name from her lips sent an unexpected warmth through him. Benjamin is fine, or Ben, if you prefer. No need for formality out here. Then you should call me Bridget, she said, since we are apparently going to be spending several afternoons a week together. Bridget, Benjamin repeated, and liked the way the name felt. I will see you tomorrow then, around 2 o'clock. I will be here, Bridget promised, though perhaps working on something less disastrous than hide preparation. Benjamin gathered his tools, returned his knife to the sheath on his belt, and prepared to mount his horse. The big bay gelding had been waiting patiently, cropping grass near the creek. As Benjamin swung into the saddle, he looked back at Bridget and found her watching him with an expression he could not quite read. Thank you again, she said, for stopping, for helping, for not making me feel more foolish than I already did. Everyone needs help sometimes, Benjamin said. No shame in that. He turned his horse toward home, but he could feel Bridget's eyes on him until he crossed the creek and rode up into the hills where his own land began. The sun was setting properly now, turning the whole world orange and red, and Benjamin felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. It took him most of the ride home to recognize it as anticipation. The next afternoon arrived hot and clear, the kind of day where heat shimmered off the rocks, and even the lizards looked for shade. Benjamin finished his morning work quickly, checking water levels in the stock tanks, mending a section of corral fencing that had worked loose, and making sure his horses had enough hay to last until evening. Then he washed at the pump, changed into a clean shirt, and tried not to think too hard about why he cared how he looked. The ride to the Richardson place took 40 minutes at an easy pace, following the creek through stands of cottonwood and aspen that provided welcome shade. Benjamin had traveled this route countless times over the years, knew every rock and turn, but today it felt different somehow, charged with possibility in a way that made him nervous and excited in equal measure. When he arrived, Bridget was waiting by the barn, wearing a different dress than yesterday, but equally practical, her hair again pinned up in a style that was already losing its battle with the wind. She waved when she saw him, her face breaking into a smile that transformed her features from pretty to genuinely beautiful. You came, she said as he dismounted, and there was relief in her voice. Part of me worried you might reconsider, that you would realize you had promised to waste your time on a helpless Easterner who cannot tell a cow from a bull. Can you tell a cow from a bull? Benjamin asked, tying his horse to the rail. Actually, yes, Bridget said with some pride. I spent this morning studying my uncle's stock, and I am fairly confident I have identified which are which, though I am sure there are subtleties I am missing. That is a good start, Benjamin said, meaning it. Most people do not bother to look closely enough to learn. They just assume they will figure it out when it matters, and then they make expensive mistakes. Speaking of my uncle, Bridget said, he wants to meet you properly, to thank you for helping yesterday and for offering to teach me. Would you mind coming inside for a moment? Benjamin followed her into the small ranch house, which was neat but showed signs of neglect in a way that suggested Bill Richardson's illness had been affecting him for longer than anyone realized. The wood floors needed sweeping, the windows could use washing, and there was a general air of things not quite maintained. But it was still clearly a home, with care evident in the placement of furniture, the quality of the curtains, the family photographs on the mantel. Bill Richardson was sitting in a chair by the window, a blanket over his legs despite the heat. He had lost weight since Benjamin last saw him, his face gaunt and his color not good. But his eyes were sharp and alert when Benjamin entered. "Ben Tucker," Bill said, his voice raspier than it should be. "Bridget tells me you saved her from destroying my entire winter's supply of trade leather." "I just offered some guidance, sir," Benjamin said. "She is a quick learner." "She is too stubborn for her own good is what she is," Bill said, but there was affection in his voice. "Came all the way from Boston thinking she could manage a ranch with no experience, no training, nothing but determination. I keep telling her she should sell this place and go back east, find some clerk to marry, have an easier life." "I do not want an easier life," Bridget said firmly. "I want to be useful, and you are not selling this land. It is your home." "It is too much for you," Bill said, and Benjamin could hear the frustration beneath the words. "Too much for a woman alone, especially one who does not know the work." "Then she learns the work," Benjamin said quietly. "If she wants to stay, if she is willing to put in the effort, she can learn what she needs to know. My father always said anyone can learn anything if they want it badly enough." Bill looked at him for a long moment, and Benjamin saw the calculation happening behind those tired eyes. "You offering to teach her?" "I already did," Benjamin said. "I told Bridget I would come by a few times a week, help her learn the skills she needs, if that is acceptable to you, sir." "Why?" Bill asked bluntly. "You got your own spread to manage. Why spend time teaching my niece?" It was a fair question, and Benjamin took a moment to form his answer. "Because you helped me when my father died, because good neighbors matter out here, and because there is no point in hoarding knowledge when sharing it makes everyone stronger." Bill was quiet for another moment, then nodded slowly. "Your father was a good man. Taught you right. If you are willing to pass that on, I would be grateful. Bridget means well, but she is going to get herself hurt, or worse, trying to figure everything out alone." "I am standing right here," Bridget said with exasperation. "You two do realize I can hear you talking about me?" "Good," Bill said. "Then you hear me saying you should listen to what Ben teaches you. Follow his instruction, do not improvise, do not think you know better just because you read something in a book. The frontier does not care about your Boston education. It only cares whether you can survive it." "I understand, Uncle," Bridget said, and Benjamin could see her fighting not to roll her eyes. They talked for a few more minutes, and Benjamin was able to assess Bill's condition more thoroughly. The man was struggling, no question. His breathing was labored even at rest, and there was a wet quality to his cough that suggested fluid in his lungs. He needed more care than he was getting, possibly more care than Bridget could provide, while also learning to manage the ranch. When they finally left the house, Benjamin said carefully, "Your uncle is sicker than you indicated yesterday." "I know," Bridget said quietly. "The doctor comes once a week from town. He says there is nothing more to be done except keep Uncle Bill rested, make sure he does not strain himself. But he grows weaker every day, and I do not know how to stop it." "You cannot," Benjamin said gently. "Some things are beyond our control. What you can do is make sure he is comfortable, that the ranch is managed so he does not worry himself into worse health, and that you are prepared for whatever comes." Bridget wrapped her arms around herself despite the heat. "You mean prepared for him to die?" I mean, prepared to continue, Benjamin said. Whether he recovers or not, you need to know how to manage this place. That is what I can help with. They walked together toward the pasture where the cattle were grazing, and Benjamin began teaching Bridget how to read her uncle's stock. He showed her the signs of a healthy animal versus one that might be developing problems, how to check for foot issues, how to spot weight loss or other indicators of illness. Bridget watched and listened with fierce concentration, asking questions that showed she was truly trying to understand not just what to do, but why. That one there, Benjamin said, pointing to a young heifer at the edge of the herd. She is favoring her left front leg. See how she is not putting full weight on it? Bridget squinted into the sun. I do see that. What does it mean? Could be a stone bruise, could be an injury, could be the start of something more serious. We should bring her in, check her over properly. How do we do that? Bridget asked. Benjamin almost laughed at the enormity of that question. That is a whole lesson in itself. Herding, roping, animal handling. We will work up to that. For now, just keep an eye on her. If she is still favoring it tomorrow, we will need to intervene. They spent the rest of the afternoon walking the property, and Benjamin found himself enjoying the work more than he expected. Bridget was genuinely interested in everything he showed her, and her questions were intelligent. She had a good eye for detail once she knew what to look for, and she was not afraid to admit when she did not understand something. As the sun began its descent, they made their way back to the barn. Bridget's dress was dusty, her face flushed from sun and exertion, and she looked more tired than she probably realized. But there was satisfaction in her expression, too. Thank you, she said as Benjamin untied his horse. I learned more this afternoon than in 3 weeks of trying to figure things out on my own. This is just the beginning, Benjamin warned. There is so much to learn, it can feel overwhelming. Everything feels overwhelming, Bridget admitted, but less so when you are explaining it. You have a gift for teaching, making complex things understandable. Benjamin felt his face warm at the compliment. My father was the real teacher. I am just passing on what he gave me. Then he must have been an extraordinary man, Bridget said softly, to raise a son who would help a stranger with such patience and generosity. You are not a stranger, Benjamin said. You are Bill Richardson's niece, which makes you a neighbor. That is almost like family out here. I am beginning to understand that, Bridget said. In Boston, I barely knew the people in the apartments next to mine. Here, neighbors seem to mean something different, something more. They do, Benjamin agreed. They mean survival. They mean you are not alone even when you are miles from anyone. They mean someone will notice if your smoke stops rising, or if your stock gets loose, or if something goes wrong. Will you notice? Bridget asked, and there was something vulnerable in the question. If something goes wrong here? Yes, Benjamin said simply. I will notice. I will check on you both, make sure you are managing, and if you need help with something beyond what our lessons cover, you send word. I am only an hour away at hard riding. An hour is a long way if there is an emergency, Bridget said. It is, Benjamin acknowledged, which is why we make sure you know how to handle most emergencies yourself. That is part of what I'm going to teach you. He swung up into his saddle, looking down at her. In the golden light of late afternoon, with dust motes dancing in the air and the mountains rising purple behind her, Bridget Richardson looked like she belonged here, like she was part of the landscape rather than a stranger to it. The thought surprised Benjamin with its intensity. I will see you tomorrow, Bridget asked. Tomorrow, Benjamin confirmed. We will work on basic animal care. Bring your uncle's medical kit if he has one. He does, Bridget said. I will have it ready. Benjamin rode home through the gathering dusk, his mind full of everything he had observed. Bill Richardson was failing faster than Benjamin had realized, and Bridget was going to be alone on that ranch sooner rather than later. The thought troubled him deeply. A woman alone on a frontier ranch was vulnerable in ways that had nothing to do with her skills or knowledge. She would be seen as easy prey by drifters, as unclaimed property by men who viewed women as commodities, as an oddity by the townsfolk who could never quite accept someone who did not fit their narrow definitions of proper. He needed to teach her everything he could as quickly as possible, but more than that, he needed to figure out how to protect her once Bill was gone. The thought of Bridget facing the harsh realities of frontier life alone made his chest tight with an emotion he was not ready to examine too closely. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Benjamin rode over to the Richardson place every afternoon, and each time he taught Bridget something new. They worked on animal husbandry, learning how to treat common ailments and injuries in cattle and horses. They practiced roping and herding, and though Bridget was clumsy at first, she improved with determined practice. They worked on preserving food, reading weather signs, managing water resources, and 100 other skills that seemed small individually, but added up to the difference between survival and failure. Through it all, Benjamin found himself looking forward to those afternoons, with an intensity that surprised him. It was not just the teaching, though he enjoyed passing on his father's knowledge. It was Bridget herself. She had a quick mind and a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard. She was not afraid of hard work or getting dirty, and she never complained even when the tasks were difficult or unpleasant. More than that, she listened when he talked about his father, about the loneliness of the past 2 years, about the weight of managing everything alone. And she talked too, sharing stories of her life in Boston, of her parents and their deep love for each other, of the loneliness she had felt in a crowded city surrounded by people who did not truly see her. She spoke of books she had read and ideas she had pondered, bringing a perspective Benjamin had never encountered. Their conversations ranged from the practical to the philosophical, and Benjamin found himself thinking about things he had not considered in years. It was during the 3rd week, while they were treating a cow with an infected cut on her leg, that Benjamin realized he was falling in love with Bridget Richardson. They were in the barn, Bridget holding the cow's head steady, while Benjamin cleaned the wound with careful efficiency. The cow was not happy about the situation and kept trying to pull away, but Bridget held firm, murmuring soothing nonsense to the animal that seemed to calm her. "You are good with her," Benjamin said, painting iodine over the cleaned cut. "She trusts you." "I read that animals can sense fear," Bridget said, "so I try not to be afraid, even when I am. Fake confidence until it becomes real confidence." "Does that work?" Benjamin asked, amused. "Sometimes," Bridget admitted. "Other times, I just end up bruised and dirty, but still terrified." Benjamin laughed, the sound surprising both of them. He did not laugh often, had almost forgotten how. But something about Bridget brought it out of him, made the world feel lighter than it had in years. "What?" Bridget asked, smiling at him over the cow's back. "Why are you laughing?" "Because you are honest," Benjamin said. "Most people would pretend they were not afraid, act like everything was easy. You just admit it and do the work anyway. That is real courage." Bridget's cheeks colored, and she looked down at the cow. "I do not feel courageous. I feel like I am barely holding everything together, pretending I know what I am doing when really I am making it up as I go." "That is what everyone is doing," Benjamin said. "We are all just making it up, hoping we do not fail too badly before we figure it out." "Even you?" Bridget asked, looking back up at him. "Especially me," Benjamin said. "I have been alone on my father's ranch for 2 years, trying to manage everything he built without him there to guide me. Half the time, I have no idea if I'm making the right decisions. I just do my best and hope the consequences are not catastrophic." They finished with the cow and released her back to the pasture, then walked together to the creek to wash their hands. The water was cold from mountain snowmelt, shocking against sun-warmed skin. They sat on the bank afterward, letting their hands dry in the air, neither one quite ready to return to work. "Can I ask you something personal?" Bridget said after a few moments of comfortable silence. "You can ask," Benjamin said. "I will decide if I want to answer." "Why have you not married?" Bridget asked. "You are a good man, you have property, you clearly have skills and knowledge. Women in town must have noticed you." Benjamin was quiet for a long moment, trying to find the right words. "After my father died, I was not fit company for anyone. I was angry and grieving and barely functional. By the time I came out of that darkness, I had been alone so long, I did not know how to be any other way. And the women in town, they want someone sociable, someone who will attend dances and church socials and community events. That is not who I am." "What are you then?" Bridget asked softly. Benjamin looked out across the water, watching it catch the sunlight. "I am someone who likes silence and open spaces, someone who prefers the company of animals to most people, someone who has been hurt enough that trust does not come easy. That is not exactly appealing to most women." "It is appealing to me," Bridget said, so quietly he almost missed it. Benjamin's heart lurched in his chest. He turned to look at her and found her watching him with an expression that was equal parts nervous and determined. "Bridget, I know it is inappropriate for me to say such things, she continued quickly. I know I am supposed to be demure and wait for you to indicate interest first. But my mother always said life is too short for games, and out here especially, we do not have time to dance around the truth. So, I am telling you, I like you, Benjamin Tucker. I like spending these afternoons with you. I like how patient you are when you teach me, how you never make me feel stupid even when I make mistakes. I like your stories about your father, and the way you care for animals, and the quiet strength you carry. And I find myself hoping you might feel something similar about me. Benjamin stared at her, his mind reeling. He had been so careful to keep his growing feelings hidden, assuming they were one-sided, that Bridget saw him only as a teacher and neighbor. The idea that she might return his interest had not seriously occurred to him. You should not like me, he finally said, his voice rough. You deserve someone better, someone more educated, someone who can give you a comfortable life, someone who fits with the world you came from. I do not want to go back to that world, Bridget said firmly. It was lonely and empty and full of people who cared more about appearances than substance. Here, everything is real. The work is real. The relationships are real. The challenges are real. And you are real, Benjamin. You do not pretend to be something you are not. You are exactly yourself, and that is what I want. You barely know me, Benjamin protested, even as hope bloomed painfully in his chest. I know you ride over here every afternoon to teach me skills you could be using on your own ranch, Bridget said. I know you speak about your father with such love that it makes my heart ache. I know you treat animals with gentleness and respect. I know you have carried grief alone for 2 years and are still kind despite it. What else do I need to know? Benjamin reached out without thinking, cupping her cheek with his hand. Her skin was warm and soft, and she leaned into his touch with a small sigh. I am falling in love with you, he said, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. I have been for weeks, but I did not think you could possibly feel the same way. Why not? Bridget asked, covering his hand with hers. Because I came from Boston? Because I did not know how to prepare a hide or manage cattle? Those are skills, Benjamin, not measures of worth. And you have been teaching me those skills with such patience that I find myself falling in love with you more with each lesson. Benjamin leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away, but she met him halfway. Their lips touched softly at first, tentative and questioning, then with growing certainty. Bridget tasted like creek water and sunlight, and Benjamin felt something long frozen in his chest crack open and bloom. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Benjamin rested his forehead against hers. Your uncle is going to think I took advantage of the situation. My uncle is going to be thrilled I found someone who can help me manage this ranch, Bridget said practically. He worries constantly about what will happen to me when he is gone. If he knows I have you, he will rest easier. The mention of Bill Richardson's failing health brought reality crashing back. Benjamin pulled away slightly, looking seriously at Bridget. We should talk to him. Make sure he approves. I do not want him thinking I had ulterior motives in offering to teach you. He already approves, Bridget said. He told me last week that if I had any sense, I would set my cap at you. He said you are the kind of man who can be trusted, who knows the land, who was raised right. He practically gave me a lecture on not letting you slip away. Benjamin could not help but smile at that. Did he actually say, set your cap? He is old-fashioned, Bridget said, smiling back. But yes, those were his exact words. He has been pushing me to be more forward with you for days. I was simply too nervous to take his advice until now. They sat by the creek for a while longer, holding hands and talking about what this new development meant. Benjamin was cautious by nature, especially about matters of the heart, but he also recognized that Bridget was right about frontier life, not allowing time for elaborate courtship. They needed to be practical about their feelings while still honoring them. We should take things slowly, Benjamin said. Get to know each other better. Make sure this is real and not just proximity and convenience. We have been getting to know each other every afternoon for 3 weeks, Bridget pointed out. How much slower do you want to go? I just do not want you to regret this, Benjamin said. To wake up one morning and realize you settled for the first man who was kind to you because you were lonely and scared. Bridget turned to face him fully, her eyes fierce. I am not settling, and I am not some fragile flower who cannot know her own mind. I am telling you clearly, I want this. I want you. If you feel the same way, then we move forward. If you do not, then we remain friends and neighbors and nothing more. but do not make decisions for me based on what you think I should want." Her directness was like cold water, shocking but clarifying. Benjamin realized he had been condescending without meaning to, treating her like she needed his protection rather than respecting her as an equal capable of making her own choices. "You are right," he said. "I apologize. I do want this. I want you. And we will move forward at whatever pace feels right to both of us." Bridget's expression softened. "Thank you. Now, shall we go tell my uncle, or would you prefer to maintain suspense?" They found Bill Richardson sitting in his usual chair by the window, and one look at their joined hands and probably visible happiness told him everything he needed to know. His face creased into a smile that made him look years younger despite his illness. "About damn time," he said. "I was beginning to think I would have to lock you two in the barn together to make you see sense." "Uncle Bill," Bridget protested, blushing. "Do not Uncle Bill me," he said. "I have eyes. I have been watching you two dance around each other for weeks. Ben, you have my blessing to court my niece, though it looks like you have already started." "Yes, sir," Benjamin said, feeling oddly formal despite the situation. "I care about Bridget very much. I will treat her with respect and do right by her." "See that you do," Bill said, but his tone was warm. "She is all the family I have got left, and I want to know she will be taken care of when I'm gone." "Uncle, do not talk like that," Bridget said, moving to his side. "Someone has to," Bill said gently. "We both know I am not getting better. The doctor told me last visit that I have maybe 6 months, probably less. That is why I am glad you have Ben now. He will help you keep this place running, teach you what you need to know. And if you two decide to marry, well, that would make an old man very happy." Bridget had tears streaming down her face now, and Benjamin felt his own eyes burning. 6 months. That was less time than he had feared, but more than he had hoped. "We will take care of everything," Benjamin promised. "Bridget will not be alone, and the ranch will be managed properly. You have my word." Bill nodded, satisfied. "That is all I needed to hear. Now get out of here, both of you. Go do whatever young people in love do. Just do not forget to check on that heifer with the bad leg." They left him resting and walked back outside into the slanting afternoon light. Bridget was still crying, and Benjamin pulled her into his arms, holding her, while she shook with silent sobs. "I knew he was dying," she said against his chest. "But hearing him say it, hearing him put a timeline on it that makes it real." "I know," Benjamin said, stroking her hair, "but he is at peace with it, and he is right that you will not be alone. I will be here for whatever you need." "Do you mean that?" Bridget asked, pulling back to look at him. "This is not some obligation you feel because he is dying?" "This is not obligation," Benjamin said firmly. "This is me choosing you because you are remarkable and strong and everything I did not know I wanted. Your uncle's blessing is appreciated, but my feelings exist independent of his opinion." Bridget nodded, wiping her eyes. "I am sorry. I am not usually so emotional. It has just been a difficult few weeks." "You do not need to apologize for feeling things," Benjamin said. "That is one of the things I like about you. You are honest about your emotions instead of hiding them away." They spent the rest of the afternoon working together in a new and comfortable silence, checking on the cattle and making sure everything was secure for the night. When Benjamin finally prepared to leave, Bridget walked with him to where his horse was tied. "Will you still come tomorrow?" she asked. "Every day if you want me to," Benjamin said. "We can adjust the lessons now that we are courting. Maybe spend some time just being together without always working." "I would like that," Bridget said. She stood on her toes and kissed him softly, a gentle brush of lips that still sent warmth through his entire body. "Thank you for today, for everything." Benjamin rode home through the twilight, feeling like the world had shifted on its axis. He was courting Bridget Richardson. He was in love for the first time in his life, genuinely and completely. And while the shadow of Bill's coming death hung over everything, there was also hope. Hope that he would not be alone anymore, that he would have a partner to share the work and the silence and the beauty of this hard land. The next few weeks were some of the happiest Benjamin had ever known. He continued teaching Bridget the skills she needed, but they also made time to simply be together. They rode out to check fence lines and ended up sitting in meadows talking for hours. They worked on hide preparation but stopped to watch sunsets paint the sky impossible colors. They practiced roping cattle but dissolved into laughter when Bridget's loop caught on a fence post instead of the target steer. Bill Richardson declined steadily, his good days becoming rarer, but he seemed content watching Benjamin and Bridget fall more deeply in love. He gave them his blessing to marry whenever they chose, telling them not to wait on his account. "Life is too short to waste time on long engagements," he said one evening when they were all sitting together on the porch. "If you love each other, make it official. Give me the joy of seeing my girl married before I go." Benjamin and Bridget looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations that couples develop. They had known each other for less than 2 months, but it felt like much longer. The intensity of frontier life compressed time, made relationships develop faster, because there was no buffer of polite society or long courtship rituals. You learned who someone truly was when you worked beside them in the sun and dealt with cattle and managed crisis after crisis together. "What do you think?" Benjamin asked Bridget. "Are you ready to be married to a cowboy rancher who talks more to his horses than most people?" "I think I cannot imagine my life without you in it," Bridget said simply. "So yes, I am ready if you are." "Then let us get married," Benjamin said, feeling certain and terrified in equal measure. "Soon. This week if we can arrange it." They rode into Granite the next day to speak with the preacher and make arrangements. The town was small, just a main street with a general store, a saloon, a hotel, a blacksmith, and a few other businesses clustered together like they were afraid of the vast emptiness surrounding them. The church was a simple white building at the far end of the street, and the preacher was a kind man in his 50s who had known Benjamin's father. "I am glad to see you settling down, Ben," Reverend Matthews said when they explained what they wanted. "Your father would have been happy knowing you found someone to share your life with." "Thank you, Reverend," Benjamin said. "We were hoping you could perform the ceremony quickly. Bridget's uncle is very ill, and we want him to be present if possible." "How quickly are we talking?" the Reverend asked. "This Saturday if you are available," Bridget said. "I know it is soon, but Uncle Bill does not have much time." The Reverend consulted his schedule, such as it was. "Saturday afternoon works for me. Shall we say 3 o'clock at the Richardson Ranch? That way Bill does not have to travel." "That would be perfect," Bridget said, relief evident on her face. They spent the rest of the week preparing. Bridget had no fancy dress and no time to make one, so she simply altered her best Sunday dress to fit better. Benjamin bought a new shirt from the general store and polished his only pair of dress boots. They invited a handful of neighbors who knew them both, wanting to keep it small and intimate. Saturday arrived clear and warm, one of those perfect September days when Colorado showed why people endured the harsh winters and brutal summers. Bill Richardson was having a good day, his mind clear even if his body was failing, and he sat in his chair by the window, dressed in his own best clothes to watch his niece get married. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. Bridget wore wildflowers in her hair that Benjamin had picked that morning. Benjamin's hands shook slightly when he placed the simple gold band on her finger, a ring that had been his grandmother's that his father had saved. They said their vows in front of God and Bill Richardson and the handful of neighbors who had become friends, promising to love and honor each other through whatever challenges frontier life brought. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, and Benjamin kissed Bridget for the first time as her husband, he felt something settle in his soul. This was right. This was what his father would have wanted for him. This was the beginning of a new chapter in a story he had thought was ending. They celebrated with a simple meal, and their neighbors stayed for a few hours before heading home before dark. Bill Richardson looked exhausted but happy, and after everyone left, he called Benjamin and Bridget to his side. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "for giving me this, for letting me see Bridget settled and happy before I go. It is more than most men get." "Uncle Bill, do not," Bridget started, but he shook his head. "Let me say this," he insisted. "Ben, you take care of my girl. She is stubborn and proud, and she will try to do everything herself, but do not let her. Make her accept help. Make her see she does not have to be alone anymore." "I will," Benjamin promised. "She is my wife now, my partner. We face everything together." "Good," Bill said. He looked at Bridget. "And you, girl, you listen to your husband, not because he is a man and you are a woman, but because he knows this land and this life. Do not let your pride make you stupid." "I will try, Uncle," Bridget said, crying again. "I love you so much. Thank you for bringing me here, for giving me this chance at a new life." "You gave yourself this chance," Bill said. "You came out here alone and scared, and you did not give up. You learned and worked and fought for what you wanted. I am proud of you, Bridget." Your parents would be proud of you." They sat with him until he fell asleep, then retreated to the small bedroom that would be theirs now. Benjamin and Bridget lay together in the dark, fully clothed, just holding each other and listening to Bill's labored breathing from the other room. "He will not last much longer," Bridget whispered. "Maybe a few more weeks." "I know," Benjamin said, "but he got to see you married. He got to know you will be taken care of. That is a gift." "I do not feel ready to lose him," Bridget said. "He is my only family." "Then we make sure his last days are comfortable and full of love," Benjamin said. "That is all we can do." Bill Richardson died 3 weeks later on a quiet October morning when the aspens were blazing gold against the blue sky. He passed peacefully in his sleep, and while Bridget grieved deeply, there was also relief that his suffering had ended. They buried him on a hillside overlooking the ranch he had built, and Benjamin made sure the grave was marked with a proper stone. After the funeral, Benjamin and Bridget had to figure out how to blend their two lives into one. It made sense to combine the ranches since they were adjacent, but it meant a lot of work moving stock, consolidating resources, and deciding which property would be their primary home. They chose Benjamin's ranch because the house was larger and in better repair, but they kept Bill's land as pasture and used his barn for equipment storage. The work was endless, the kind of labor that filled every daylight hour and then some. But they worked side by side, and the partnership they built was strong. Bridget continued to improve her skills, becoming genuinely competent at animal care, hide preparation, and all the other tasks frontier life demanded. She still asked questions and made mistakes, but Benjamin never made her feel inadequate. He praised her successes and helped her learn from her failures, and slowly she transformed from an uncertain Easterner into a capable ranch wife. They fell into rhythms together, learning each other's habits and preferences. Benjamin discovered that Bridget sang while she worked, old songs she had learned from her mother, her voice clear and sweet in the mountain air. Bridget learned that Benjamin needed silence in the early mornings, that he processed his thoughts best when he could just be still and watch the sun rise without conversation. They both learned to read each other's moods, to know when to offer comfort and when to give space, to understand that love was not just passion, but also patience and persistence. Winter came hard and early that year, with snow falling in mid-November and not stopping until the drifts were taller than the fences. They were snowed in for weeks at a time, forced to rely entirely on their own resources and each other. It was during those long winter nights, trapped inside by blizzards, that Benjamin and Bridget truly became partners in every sense. They talked about everything, their pasts, their dreams, their fears, their hopes. They made love in front of the fire and woke tangled together in their bed, and Benjamin marveled that he had ever lived any other way. By the time spring arrived, green and wild and full of promise, Bridget was pregnant. They discovered it in April when she started feeling sick in the mornings, and the realization filled them both with joy and terror. Childbirth was dangerous in the best of circumstances, but out on a remote ranch miles from the nearest doctor, it was potentially deadly. "We could go into town," Benjamin suggested when they confirmed the pregnancy. "Stay at the hotel for the last month, be close to the doctor." "And who would manage the ranch?" Bridget asked practically. "The cattle do not stop needing care just because I am having a baby. Besides, women have been giving birth in remote places since the beginning of time. I will be fine." Benjamin was not so sure, but he also knew better than to argue with his wife when she had that particular tone in her voice. Instead, he made sure they had plenty of supplies, that he knew everything the doctor had taught him about assisting with births, that they had a plan for every possible complication. It did not make him less terrified, but at least it gave him the illusion of control. Bridget remained strong and capable throughout the pregnancy, insisting on doing her share of the work despite Benjamin's protests. She prepared hides with the skill of someone who had been doing it for years, gentle and efficient, her hands moving with unconscious grace. Watching her work, remembering how he had found her that first day destroying good leather, Benjamin felt overwhelming gratitude for whatever twist of fate had brought them together. "What are you staring at?" Bridget asked, looking up from the hide she was treating. "You," Benjamin said honestly, "thinking about how far you have come." "You mean from ruining hides to actually being competent at preparing them?" Bridget asked with amusement. "That," Benjamin agreed, "but also everything else. You came out here alone and afraid, and you turned yourself into someone who can survive anything this land throws at you. That takes real courage." "I had a good teacher," Bridget said softly. "Someone who was patient with my mistakes and believed I could learn even when I did not believe it myself. My father always said the best teaching is just showing someone what is possible and then getting out of their way," Benjamin said. "You did the real work. You earned every skill you have." Bridget set down her tools and came to him, her pregnant belly round and prominent between them. She kissed him gently, tasting like sage and sunshine. "We earn them together. That is what partners do. They lift each other up until both are stronger than either was alone." Their son was born in December during a rare warm spell that melted the snow and turned the ranch into a sea of mud. The birth was long and difficult, and there were moments when Benjamin thought he might lose both Bridget and the baby. But his wife was as stubborn about childbirth as she was about everything else, and after 14 hours of labor, she delivered a healthy boy with a full head of dark hair and lungs that could wake the dead. They named him William after Bill Richardson, and Benjamin held his son in shaking hands while Bridget slept the exhausted sleep of someone who had fought a battle and won. Looking down at the tiny face, feeling the weight of this new life he was responsible for, Benjamin felt terror and wonder in equal measure. "Your grandfather would have loved you," he whispered to the sleeping baby. "My father and your mother's uncle. They were good men who taught me how to live right. I will try to pass that on to you." William grew strong and healthy, thriving in the mountain air. Bridget recovered quickly from the birth, though she was more cautious about heavy work in the first few weeks. They adjusted to parenthood with the same determination they brought to everything else, learning by doing and helping each other through the exhaustion and uncertainty. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered under their combined management. They expanded the herd, improved the quality of their stock, built new outbuildings, and repaired old ones. Benjamin taught Bridget how to break horses, and she taught him bookkeeping and how to negotiate better prices in town. They became known in Granite as a solid couple, hardworking and honest, the kind of people you wanted as neighbors. They had 3 more children over the next 8 years, a daughter named Sarah, then another son named James, and finally another daughter named Charlotte. The house rang with children's laughter, with the chaos of family meals, with the bedtime stories Benjamin told about his father, and the songs Bridget sang from her Boston childhood. It was everything Benjamin had never known he wanted, a fullness of life that healed old wounds and created new joy. On their 10th anniversary, Benjamin and Bridget rode out to the place where he had first found her, ruining good hides, where their story had really begun. The spot looked the same, but also completely different, as if time had transformed it into something more significant than just a random place on the ranch. "Do you ever regret it?" Benjamin asked as they sat together watching the sunset. "Coming out here, leaving your old life behind?" "Never," Bridget said firmly. "That old life was empty. This one is full, sometimes too full, but never empty. I have you, I have our children, I have work that matters and skills I am proud of. What could I possibly regret?" "The hardship," Benjamin suggested. "The isolation, the danger, all the things you did not know about frontier life when you agreed to come out here." "Those things made me who I am now," Bridget said. "Without the hardship, I would still be that helpless woman who did not know how to prepare a hide. I needed the challenges to discover what I was capable of." Benjamin pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I am grateful every day that you were terrible at hide work. If you had been competent, I might have just ridden past without stopping to help." "So my incompetence brought us together?" Bridget said with a laugh. "That is very romantic." "It is true, though," Benjamin said seriously. "I saw you struggling with something my father had taught me, and I could not just walk away. Teaching you connected us before either of us realized what was happening." "Your father's legacy," Bridget said softly. "He taught you skills, but he also taught you generosity and patience. Those are the things that drew me to you, that made me fall in love with you. The skills were just the excuse that brought us together." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dropped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and red. Somewhere behind them, their children were being watched by a neighbor who owed them a favor. Tomorrow they would return to the endless work of the ranch, to cattle and horses and hides and all the tasks that defined their days. But tonight, they were just Benjamin and Bridget remembering how they began. "I love you," Benjamin said, the words as true now as they had been 10 years ago by the creek. I love the woman you were, and the woman you became, and everything in between. I love you too, Bridget said, turning to kiss him. Thank you for seeing potential in me when I was just ruining good hides. Thank you for being patient enough to teach me everything I needed to know. Thank you for choosing me. You chose me too, Benjamin reminded her. You were brave enough to be honest about your feelings when I was too scared to speak mine. That changed everything. They rode home through the gathering darkness, their horses finding the familiar path without guidance. The house glowed with lamplight, warm and welcoming, a beacon in the wilderness. Inside, their children would be getting ready for bed, and tomorrow would bring new challenges and joys. But for now, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Years continued to pass, marked by seasons and celebrations and the steady rhythm of ranch life. William grew tall and strong, inheriting his father's way with animals and his mother's quick mind. Sarah became skilled at hide preparation, working alongside Bridget with a patience and artistry that would have made Bill Richardson proud. James showed aptitude for horse training, able to gentle even the most skittish colt. Charlotte was still young, but already showed signs of being as stubborn and determined as her mother. Benjamin taught all his children the skills his father had taught him, passing on knowledge about the land and the animals and the work that defined their lives. But he also taught them about kindness and generosity, about helping neighbors and never wasting what the animals gave. He taught them to see value in things others might overlook, to understand that every person and creature deserved respect. Bridget taught them too, giving them the benefit of her Boston education alongside frontier skills. She made sure they could read and write and figure numbers, that they knew poetry and history and science. She wanted them to understand they had choices, that they could stay on the ranch or make their own way in the wider world, and either path was valid as long as they lived with integrity. The ranch continued to prosper. They were never wealthy by city standards, but they had everything they needed and enough surplus to help neighbors in hard times. Their reputation for quality stock and fair dealing spread throughout the region, and buyers came from as far as Denver to purchase their cattle and horses. The hides Bridget prepared became sought after for their superior quality, and she took quiet pride in the mastery of a skill she had once been terrible at. Benjamin aged well, his face weathering into character lines that made him look distinguished rather than old. His hands remained strong and capable, still able to do the work that needed doing. Bridget aged gracefully too, her dark blonde hair turning silver at the temples, her face showing the marks of a life lived outdoors, but also the contentment of someone who had found where they belonged. They never forgot the moment that brought them together. Benjamin finding Bridget ruining good hides and choosing to help rather than judge. It became a story they told at family gatherings, a reminder that the most important moments in life often come disguised as ordinary choices. Benjamin could have ridden past that day, could have left Bridget to her struggles, but he had not. His father's teaching had compelled him to stop, to offer help, to share knowledge, and that single choice had changed everything. On their 20th anniversary, their children threw them a celebration that brought together people from all over the region. The house and barn were full of neighbors and friends, all of whom had stories about Benjamin and Bridget's generosity and hard work. There was music and dancing and enough food for an army, and as Benjamin watched his wife laugh with old friends while their grandchildren played at her feet, he felt gratitude so profound it brought tears to his eyes. "You are getting sentimental in your old age," Bridget teased, finding him standing alone on the porch. "Just appreciating what we built," Benjamin said, pulling her into his arms. "Everything we survived and created together." "We did well," Bridget agreed, resting her head on his shoulder. "Better than I ever imagined that day you found me destroying your neighbor's hides." "My neighbor's niece," Benjamin corrected with a smile, an important distinction. "The niece who had no idea what she was doing," Bridget said. "The niece who was terrified and overwhelmed and convinced she would fail at everything this life required." "The niece who was brave enough to keep trying despite being terrified," Benjamin countered, "who learned every skill I could teach and then found ways to improve on them, who built a life out of nothing but determination and stubbornness." "And love," Bridget added softly. "Do not forget the love. That was the real foundation of everything." "No," Benjamin said, kissing the top of her head. "I will never forget the love. That was the only thing that mattered. In the end, All the skills and knowledge and hard work would have meant nothing without the love underneath it all. They stood together on the porch, watching their family and friends celebrate, and Benjamin thought about his father and Bill Richardson, both long gone but never forgotten. They would have been proud of what he and Bridget had built, proud of the family they had raised, proud of the life they had created from that first moment of connection over a poorly prepared hide. As the sun set on their 20th anniversary celebration, painting the mountains in familiar shades of gold and purple, Benjamin Tucker held his wife close and felt profound gratitude for every choice that had led them here, for his father's teaching that compelled him to help a stranger, for Bridget's courage in coming west and admitting her feelings, for all the hard years and good years that had woven their lives together into something stronger than either could have built alone. "Thank you," he whispered to Bridget, "for being terrible at preparing hides that day, for giving me a reason to stop and teach you, and for everything that came after." Bridget laughed, the sound carrying across the porch and into the house where their family gathered. "Thank you for seeing possibility instead of failure, for being patient when I had no idea what I was doing, for loving me enough to help me become who I was meant to be." "We helped each other," Benjamin said, and knew it was true. That is what love is, not one person saving another, but both people choosing to grow together, to face challenges together, to build something neither could have created alone. As darkness fell and the celebration continued inside, Benjamin and Bridget remained on the porch, content in each other's presence. They had started with something as simple as a cowboy teaching a woman how to prepare hides the way his father had taught him. They had built from that foundation a love that spanned decades, a family that would carry forward their values, a ranch that would endure long after they were gone. It was, Benjamin thought, exactly the life his father would have wanted for him. And it was more than he had ever dared to hope for during those lonely years after his father's death. Bridget had brought light back into his life, had given him purpose beyond mere survival, and he had given her the skills and confidence to thrive in a harsh land, to discover strengths she had not known she possessed. Together, they had created something beautiful and lasting. Together, they had proved that love built on mutual respect and shared labor could weather any storm. Together, they had honored the memories of those who came before, while building a legacy for those who would come after. As they finally returned inside to join their family, Benjamin took one last look at the land, stretching away into the darkness. This was home. This was love. This was everything that mattered. And it had all started with a poorly prepared hide and a cowboy who chose to teach rather than judge, to help rather than condemn, to see potential rather than failure. It was the best choice he had ever made, Benjamin thought, taking Bridget's hand as they rejoined the celebration. The very best choice, with consequences that would echo through generations. And he would make that same choice again and again, every single time, because it had brought him here, surrounded by family, blessed with love, content in the life they had built together, from nothing but determination and devotion, and the skills a father had passed down to his son, who had shared them with the woman he loved, who had made them her own, and taught them to their children, ensuring that the legacy continued. The fire crackled in the hearth, their grandchildren's laughter rang through the house, and Benjamin Tucker knew perfect contentment. This was what his father had taught him to value, not wealth or status or ease, but connection and competence and care, the ability to see what needed doing and do it well, the willingness to share knowledge rather than hoard it, the courage to love fully and build something that would last. As the evening wound down and guests began departing, Benjamin and Bridget stood together, saying farewells, their children and grandchildren surrounding them with the warmth of family bonds forged through shared work and shared joy. When the last guest had gone and the house was quiet again, they sat together by the dying fire, hands clasped, comfortable in the silence that comes from truly knowing another person. 20 years, Bridget said softly. It feels like both forever and no time at all. I know what you mean, Benjamin said. Some days I still see you as that frustrated woman hacking away at good leather, determined to figure it out despite having no idea what you were doing. Other days, I cannot remember a time when you were not the most capable rancher I know. I had advantages, Bridget said with a smile, a very patient teacher who happened to fall in love with me. A teacher who was already half in love before he realized what was happening, Benjamin corrected. You got under my defenses before I knew I needed to defend against you. Good, Bridget said, squeezing his hand, because I was not taking no for an answer. I knew you were the one I wanted, the one I needed, someone who would challenge me to be better while accepting who I was, someone who could teach me to survive while also teaching me to live. You did the same for me, Benjamin said seriously. I was just surviving before you came into my life, existing day to day, managing the ranch but not really living. You reminded me that life is more than work and solitude. That connection and love and family are what give all the work meaning. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire burn down to embers. Outside, the Colorado night was clear and cold, stars blazing in the darkness with an intensity that never failed to inspire awe. This land was harsh and beautiful and unforgiving, and it had shaped them both into who they were meant to be. Do you think our children will stay? Bridget asked eventually. Will they want this life, or will they go seeking something else? Does it matter? Benjamin asked gently. We raise them to have choices, to know their own minds. If they stay, it should be because they want this life, not because they feel obligated. And if they go, they will carry what we taught them wherever they end up. You are right, Bridget said. I just hope they understand how special this is. Not just the land, but what we built here, the life we created together. They understand, Benjamin assured her. I see it in how William works with the cattle, in how Sarah prepares hides with such care, in how all of them treat the land and animals with respect. They got the important lessons. Everything else is just details. As they finally climbed the stairs to bed, Benjamin felt the weight of years in his bones, but also the lightness of a life well lived. He had honored his father's memory by passing on what he learned. He had found love when he had given up hoping for it. He had built something lasting with a woman who had come to him, knowing nothing but willing to learn everything. In the darkness of their bedroom, with Bridget warm beside him and the sounds of the ranch settling for the night outside their window, Benjamin offered a silent prayer of gratitude for his father, who had taught him well, for Bill Richardson, who had brought Bridget west, for the twist of fate that had led him to check that fence line on that particular afternoon, for every moment since that had brought them to this place of contentment and completion. I love you, he whispered into the darkness. I love you too, Bridget whispered back. Always have, always will. They drifted into sleep wrapped in each other's arms, the way they had for 20 years, the way they would for however many years remained to them. Outside, the mountains stood eternal under the stars, and the ranch they had built together rested quiet in the night, full of promise for the morning and all the mornings to come. Their story had started with something as simple as ruined hides and a man willing to teach what his father had taught him. It had grown into something far more significant, a love that transformed two lonely people into a family, ignorance into mastery, struggle into triumph. It was not a story of grand gestures or dramatic moments, but rather one of steady devotion, patient teaching, and the quiet courage required to build a life together in an unforgiving land. And it was, in every way that mattered, a perfect love story, one that honored the past while building toward the future, one that proved patience and partnership could overcome any obstacle, one that showed how the smallest act of kindness, a cowboy stopping to teach a stranger how to work leather, could change the course of two lives forever. As dawn broke over the ranch, Benjamin and Bridget woke to another day of work and love and life lived fully. The cattle would need tending, the horses would need care, and somewhere there would be hides that needed preparing with the skill and respect they deserved. It was the same work they had done for 20 years, work they would continue doing for as long as they were able, work that connected them to the land and to each other, and to the legacies of those who had come before. And through it all, they would remember that first afternoon when everything changed, when a cowboy saw a woman ruining good hides from lack of knowledge and chose to show her how his father had taught him. When teaching turned to friendship, friendship turned to love, and love turned into a life neither could have imagined, but both had fought to create. It was enough, more than enough. It was everything.